Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mac. This is Friday, and it is Chat with Mac Day. We're happy to have you. For all our newbies that are joining us, we welcome you to our weekly talk about all things technical, IT, all that good stuff, technology. Nadeem, how's it going, sir?
Going pretty good. So it's really not that technical. We really talk more from a business perspective.
Yep.
There's a lot of I would say majority of our audience is business owners.
Yep.
So it's not technical, but it's technical from their perspective. But it relates to business terms. So I wouldn't call it technical at all. If you're an IT admin or if you're a tech guy, this is not the call you want to be on, or this is not the video you want to watch because you'll get bored. And it's not that deep technical stuff.
No,
We're not gonna
not at
talk
all.
bits and bytes.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, new year, same old problems. Now I don't know if anyone has heard, but Malwarebytes, which Nadeem is very familiar with, they got hit by a hacker group, and I keep telling people Nadeem was super prophetic in January of last year when he said that these attacks were going to be ongoing and probably get larger and larger. Let me tell you, he was spot on. So Nadeem, tell us about this whole thing with Malwarebytes and them getting hit.
So what happened at Malwarebytes was a lack of process is what happened.
Yeah.
Lack of process. So I preach this to so I'm part of a group of countrywide, nationwide MSPs, and we talk about business in general, specifically the MSP business, which is managed service provider business. And the main way that you control costs, reduce ticket load, and improve uptimes and performance is by honing in your process. And every MSP is a little different. So every MSP has a process, but their process is their secret sauce, right? And that's what makes every MSP a little different than every other MSP. But the thing is, whether you are outsourcing to an MSP or whether you're doing it in-house, you want to have good processes in place. You don't want to have to rely on one guy to think of everything and then do it. You need to have documented process in place. Just like we have several documents in place for different processes. Right. Like for the TAM role, we have a documented process. For the VCIO, we have a documented process. I mean, we have so many documented processes. I mean, we have a documented process even for sales.
Yep.
But the thing is that the process of how you do it and how different roles are tied together, that becomes your secret sauce. Now, in this case, the breach actually happened, and let me actually share my screen real quick here. So in this case, what happened is there was an Office 365 mailbox that got compromised, or a user that got compromised. And of course, if it's an Office 365 user, that account exists in Azure. So, a certain user got breached, and we don't know all the details just yet, but a certain account got breached, and that's how hackers got access to data. Now, Mac, did you say something?
No, sir.
Okay, so that's what happened is certain customer contact information got out because a specific user's mailbox or email account got breached. If your process had been good, which is when a user leaves the company, you do certain things, you go through your steps, 1, 2, 3. Every time you do it, I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you've done it. Don't try to go off the top of your head and try to do all those steps mentally. Always have a checklist, and you're going check, check, check. So what you're doing is you're leaving an audit trail. So, first of all, if a user leaves, then a tech comes in, secures that account. That tech, if he's going through a checklist, he's leaving an audit trail for future forensic analysis. Well, in this case, that step didn't happen. So the account got left out there that now the bad guys took advantage of, breached that account, got some customer data. So first, let me say this. Malwarebytes application itself is secure. It's still good. You can still keep using it. The bad guys simply got some customer contact information by logging into this account. So the application is still good, unlike what happened in the SolarWinds instance. So now the contact information got out. But what's interesting in this scenario is, how did Malwarebytes find out? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it's going to divert attention anyway. How did Malwarebytes find out that a certain account in Office 365 was the source of a breach, ultimately leading to some contact information getting out there? It was Microsoft who reached out to Malwarebytes and told them, hey, did you know that a certain account is compromised in your tenant account? So that was a failure on multiple levels. And it was a process failure. It's plain and simple process failure, right? First time it failed when a user was no longer with the company. Somebody didn't secure that account. That's a failure over there. Second, nobody is monitoring user accounts. Nobody's monitoring internal user accounts. They didn't even know that the hack had happened until somebody from Microsoft reached out to them and said, hey, do you know that somebody's been accessing that account from a weird geographic location that never logged in before? They didn't know. So that's how it came out into the open. So what does it mean to your business? It's all about process. Have good process in place, and stuff like this shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I tell customers and even prospects and anybody I meet, they ask me, and I'm passionate about technology, so I'll go off and I'll take, they give me 1 minute and I'll take the whole day. The thing is, you have to have certain processes in place. We're getting into a situation, into times where just waiting on a user to come to us and say, hey, I have this problem, and then we fix that problem. We can't do that. We can't run business on that model anymore. We have to be more proactive now, because there are things that are happening where our users are not even going to know what's happening. For example, in this case, at Malwarebytes, the internal users of the company did not know that certain contact information got breached. It was somebody else providing a third-party service who reached out to them and said, oh, hey, hello, there's something going on over here. You might want to take a look. So that's what I'm trying to make people understand, is that times are changing. We can't run on the old model where a user has a problem. Hey, my printer's not working. Let me create a support ticket, and somebody logs in, takes care of that printer. That's no longer the model that's going to function going into the future. We have to be much more proactive on how we monitor things, how we go through logs, our processes, how on a routine basis we audit different uh, different places, different parts of your network, consolidate that into business terms so that management can understand what they're looking at without having to understand the technology. Like in this case, nobody had to understand the technology to secure that Office 365 account. That's like, hey, if a user leaves or a user is let go, you secure that account. I mean,
Right.
that's not technical. you know, uh, it's almost like, if you fire a driver, you take your car keys from him.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
It's the same exact.
This was a totally preventable situation. The process was not right, and I'm sure they're going to fix it now. Some heads are going to roll probably because this was a worldwide event. I mean, everybody knew what happened, and right on the heels of that SolarWinds
Solar
hack,
wind thing. Yeah.
so the SolarWinds hack was a little different. That was more involved, impacted more, a lot more individuals and companies. And the
And
reason,
government.
you know,
Government.
and the government, yeah. So the difference is in Malwarebytes hack, only some contact information got out. The applications, the modules, the code, all that is still secure. In the SolarWinds hack, the actual modules, the code got hacked to where there are other companies who manage other multiple companies. So if just one of these companies that's running SolarWinds, if one company uses that code and they're managing, let's say 10 customers, I'm saying only 10 customers, usually it's going to be into 80s or almost 100 customers. Let's just say 10 customers. So all of a sudden now the bad guys have access into an application that has access to 10 customer backbones. These are business backbones or government agency backbones. I mean, that was a much that was a
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm guessing whoever, the bad guys are who were involved in that hack, they struck gold on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. But
That's
now, but let me ask you, and again, you talked about this. If you look at any, if to our audience, if you look at any of the recordings like back a year ago, Nadeem saw this happening. Now, my question is this: these are big corporations that are getting hit. What are the implications to the small, our bread and butter, the small to medium sized businesses? I mean, because if I'm a business owner and I'm thinking from Mac's point of view, if I see this, I'm like, well, if they're hitting them, imagine what would happen to me, with my medium business. Yeah, I think that needs to be really explored.
yeah. So some of the stats that we are seeing, they're moving a little bit, and they're moving in a direction we don't want them to move in.
Mm,
So the needle is moving, it's just moving in the wrong
wrong
direction.
direction.
uh part of the thing is that when small to medium sized businesses get hit, I think last time I looked the number was around 47%. 47% of them do not recover from such a disaster. So 47% are going to go out of business or close down shop if they have a disaster like this.
Damn.
Now, a lot of them are not even going to report it. You're not gonna. I mean, we're not gonna see it unless we're directly involved with them somehow. We're not even gonna see it because this is not gonna be publicly released information.
Right.
These are small private companies. They have no requirements to publicly announce that they got breached or whatever have you. And this kind of stuff happens a lot. Let me give you a scenario. Um, if you get gas somewhere and your credit card gets compromised, nobody comes to you and says, "Oh, by the way, yeah, it was our pumps that got hacked and that's where your credit card information got out." Nobody tells you that. It's because these are very small companies. They don't have to tell their customers, "Oh, by the way, yeah, we got hacked." Nobody's going to say that. And you can kind of so I did a little study on this because around Christmas time, well, except this year, previous years, every time around Christmas time, one of my credit cards would get compromised. Somebody would get them, and now, so I started, plotting, where I'm using it, so getting a little more systematic about that. And I kind of figured out where it was happening. Most of the breaches were actually happening at the small, uh, where you stop and get gas, like stop and goes and places like that. So,
Mhm.
and most of them were happening not at the gas station, the pumps. They were not happening at the pump itself. It was actually happening inside. So it would happen like I would stop, I would get gas, and I would go in, get some water, or I would just stop at a gas station and get some water or get some snacks or something. That's where it was happening. So I reached out to some contacts, and I was talking to them, and I was like, look, this is what I'm seeing. This is the data that I collected, and this is what I'm seeing. And so this was a credit card company, pretty big credit card company, and they were like, yeah, we already know that. And I'm like, what? And they were like, oh yeah, and it's not like somebody's secretly making a copy of your card and then they're going to use it. They were like, no, they said these guys, they don't do that. All they have to do is they just have to look at your card once and they will remember those numbers. It's like if the numbers are written down somewhere, they're going to remember it. And it's like these guys get paid based on how many card numbers they can remember. And these guys will just look at a card, like you hand them a card and they're just going to take the card and they're going to swipe it and they'll remember those numbers.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it was like, oh yeah, this is these are pretty organized people. They're you would think that somebody with that kind of a memory can will have a much better job rather than a clerk at a convenience store. But it's this is the world we live in.
Yes, yeah,
um,
that's real.
so I'm glad that last year my car did not get compromised.
Mm.
But I was done with my study, and I located a couple of different places where the breaches were happening. I stopped going over there. Um, you know, what else can you do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, for any business out there, and this is just for your education, for the listeners' education, revisit your processes. Make sure your processes are good. If you have in-house IT guys, make sure that there are routine and constant reviews and audits and assessments. Without these, you will not know what's happening. So, I mean, in the IT world, we've been you go to any training and they'll go through this over and over. So you gotta collect all this data, you gotta audit this data, and then you gotta take some action based on this data. If you're not collecting this data, then everything else fails down the line. You can't do anything with that. And that's part of our secret sauce. Is that's how we reduce ticket volume, is by streamlining our process and making sure our process is good. Finally, it's discipline. It all comes down to discipline.
Yeah.
And people are probably asking, how is that discipline? You have your process down. It's the discipline to follow the process. Are all your users following the process? It only takes one user, remember. And that's the thing. So you don't want to you want to make it as easy as possible to follow, but as complex as necessary. As easy as possible, as complex as necessary.
Mm,
And if it's as easy as possible, then people won't have a problem following it, and they'll follow it. It's like a cookie cutter approach. They'll follow it day in and day out, but as complex as necessary. So this was a totally preventable breach. The good thing is the only thing that got out was some contact information.
right.
None of the code got breached, unlike the SolarWinds hack, which I think that fallout we're going to see for probably a couple of
They're
years.
still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, that's where we are. In this day and age, you have to make sure that your processes are good. Um, it's just a proactive world. You cannot wait on your users to say something to fix a problem.
Mm,
That's not you're not fixing the problem. That's just a symptom.
yeah.
That's just a symptom of the problem. The problem is your process is broken.
Yeah.
And then your user comes screaming, "Oh, my printer's not printing." That's just a symptom of
Hmm.
the actual problem. So get to the root cause of the problem.
That's good.
Anyway, so that's where we are. That's why, Mac, a lot of times I know I kind of stress this a lot in our internal meetings, and I always try to have these documents and these processes, and the reason is uh, businesses are built on processes. You can't build, like, especially in the IT field, you can only go so far by just fixing broken computers. You can only go so far by fixing broken computers. I mean, so you have to go beyond that, and you have to figure out the actual root cause, the cause of the problem,
Yeah.
because otherwise you can keep throwing hardware at the issue, and you're going to keep throwing hardware at the problem.
Which a lot of businesses do. A lot of, at least smaller businesses, let's say that, they are. If I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying this, a lot of them so stuck in that thinking. You throw hardware at the problem, and that's it. And we're really, what Nadeem has been trying to do is shift the thinking and going a little bit further than just thinking your laptop and God, your on-prem server is it. No, there's a lot more.
Well, think of it this way. And here's why this major shift is happening now. So, back in the day, if you had your server sitting in front of you, that was one thing. It's much easier to see a light turn off on that server or turn orange. Okay, that hard drive's going to die. Well, now you start looking at virtualization or cloud computing. Now that light may not be in front of you.
Mm,
You still need to keep track of that. So,
yep.
so unless you have such good understanding of the basics, it's going to be very hard for you to monitor and maintain. If you have a problem maintaining stuff that's right in front of you, how are you going to maintain stuff that's halfway around the world?
Yeah. That's good. No, that's
and
real.
that's what I tell people, is that cloud computing is more secure than what you can build or afford in-house on-prem. But it requires very good understanding of the basics. If your basics are not there, you'll be pulling your hair out and not figure out what's going on, why this is failing, why that is failing. Now, that's not to say that you cannot implement some cloud technologies. I mean, I know a few companies, like this one company comes to mind. They're a merchant processor, and they started moving to the cloud, and they just kind of shot from their hip and did this and did that. Well, now they're running into a situation where they've kind of painted themselves in a corner, because when they designed this, their main IT guy who designed this, thought he was God, and he understood everything. So he designed it in a way where now they've painted themselves in a corner. And every now and then we get a call from this customer. They're not on fixed costs, so they call us when something drastic happens. They have a whole team of IT people, but so they'll reach out to us and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm running into this situation. What should I do?" And blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Look, this is how you can fix this, but you're just patching the problem.
That's it.
Your design is wrong. Your design is flawed. And if your design is flawed, you're going to keep running into these problems. You're not, you have to redesign, retool your factory. Otherwise, you're going to keep putting out bad product." I mean,
That's
just
it.
the way it is.
Yeah.
So if Mac reaches out to you, anybody who's watching this, if Mac reaches out to you and says, we need to talk about changing some things around here, we really are changing some things around here.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
We are at a point where we're reaching out to some customers and telling them, look, without the fixed costs outsourcing model, without that model, we cannot support you because we cannot keep an eye on the resources like we need to if we're not on the fixed cost outsourcing model. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to.
Yep.
We don't have the resources to do things on a reactive way. And I can guarantee you this, you don't have the resources to pay us every time we go look at the logs.
Right.
That's what it comes down to, right? It's like I think I've given this example before. I was up in Conroe, and there's a big resort out there. One of our customers bought that resort, redid them, and resold it. But I was sitting in their when they were remodeling it. I was sitting in the meeting with one of his GCs, and they had put a wrong cable. They had laid a ground cable between two buildings, and they put the wrong cable in place. And the GC said, "Oh no, it's no problem. We're just gonna rip it out and replace it. It's no big deal. We can get it done in 2 days." And the owner of the business, he was a guy from Israel. I know his name, but I'm not gonna say it anyway. So he said, "Look, I know we can do this. We can run a line from Houston all the way to Hawaii. That's not the problem. The problem is who's going to pay for it."
Talk about all that other stuff about what you can do, but how's my pocket going to get hit with that? And that's a fair question.
Yeah. And he being the owner, he's the one who was putting all the money in, and he was like, "Yeah, I know we can do it, but I don't want to pay for it. Are you going to pay for it?" But anyway, so we'll leave it at that funny note. There's a lot more stories there. Maybe we'll get into some more of them one day. But yeah, folks, look at your processes. Make sure your processes are good. Be proactive, especially when it comes to security. There's just it's always lower cost to prevent something than to fix it when it breaks. And I try to, another example, just last example. So I was just talking to somebody a few days ago, and I told them, hey, so-and-so machine is more than 5 years old. It's the warranty's expired. The manufacturer's not going to renew warranty or support it. We need to replace it. And the customer was like, well, but that machine's running fine. We don't have any problems with it. And I'm like, do you really want to wait until it crashes and then look at it? And then we'll be scrambling to figure out what all we need to do, how we need to configure it. It's like, it's better to do it now while it's running. I mean, be proactive. Don't be reactive. Think about the cost when you're being reactive. If the machine goes down, now you have a couple of users that are down, and now somebody's trying to, overnight another machine, and then you implement it, and then the users log in and they say, oh no, this is not I need so-and-so software. This is not configured. I mean, look at the long-term cost. It's just better to be proactive.
Yeah.
Just do it ahead of the game. And that's what we're trying to get to, is be more proactive. Don't be reactive.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it at that.
And we'll leave it at that. Awesome.
So, Mac, you have a good day. You have a great weekend. And
yes, sir.
Everybody out there, do the same. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys, have a good one.